Every now and again, I have to visit the archives at the Bureau of Curiosity. And the last time I went down there, this happened. So, I've been composing music for a long time and have a fairly sizable archive of past work, project notes, scores that I've written on paper, and various archived data files. And I recently had this idea about what if something that I had done as a project and completed turned out to be not the final product, but just sort of an element to be used later on down the line. And specifically, maybe I had something that I wasn't super happy with that I could quote unquote make a save on. So I had a thought about getting into an album that I had made once, very experimental. But as my archive is large and I've recently moved, I wasn't able to find that piece, but I was able to find something else, which was a cassette tape containing a couple of pieces, including a piece that I wrote while I was a student for wind ensemble for a contemporary composition class. And to be completely honest, I considered the piece to be a complete failure. Just not a nice piece of music. The piece is called Book of Revelation, and it's based on the number seven, which figures heavily into the Book of Revelation. But the reason why I called it that was because I was going to adopt a sort of a formalist or almost serial approach in which everything in the piece would revolve around the number of seven, from note values, possibly dynamics, all sorts of decisions that would be taken out of my hands and using the number seven as a sort of a jumping off point. And, I did this for two reasons, one sort of a good reason and one for a less good reason. The good reason is I'm interested in sort of setting up systems for composition. I don't love the work of the serialists by and large. I thought it was sort of an interesting but not great answer to a good question, which was what comes next. But there is a fascination there because, it's like setting up a system and then seeing what comes out of it. So there was some valid reason for me wanting to do it. The less good reason was I don't know what my state of mind was, but I kind of remember just basically not wanting to really write that piece. I don't know if I was very busy with other things or my mind was elsewhere, but in sort of taking the compositional process out of my hands in a way, it was a way of sort of writing a piece without really having to do much work. I'm not proud of that, but that's really what happened. So when it came time to play the piece, the ensemble played it well enough. I'll play you a snippet of it, but it's not a good piece of music. And when my composition professor asked, as I do at the end of all these videos that I make, did you learn anything? The answer was, yeah, I learned something. I'm never doing that again. Well, never exactly that way, but I will be doing formalist experiments. But it really just was it was a kind of a waste of everybody's time. So I had kind of two basic routes I was thinking of in terms of rescuing this piece, and one of them was just going in to the recording and pulling out samples of the piece, and then reconstructing it that way by like re-triggering it as samples. Or I thought the piece stretched out might be sort of interesting in that it would still be played by people, but it would be sort of more of a glacial, slower situation. And if I applied some very clever effects to that, I might have something a little bit more interesting. So the first thing I did was to take out my old 4-track and see if that was still working. Quickly found out that that wasn't, and I remembered that's why I bought the second on eBay when I was working on my record. I was the secret that I kept so that I could transfer my old 80s songs into the computer and have them as references. So the idea here was that I was going to forego digital time stretching and do it old school by using the variable speed control on the Tascam Porta 1. The good news is I was able to get the piece into the computer and digitized at concert pitch and proper speed. As soon as I started to use the variable speed control, this is what happened. And so now I have two non-working Tascam 4 tracks on the bench that I will have to be fixing. So with the idea of using the variable tape speed as a way of getting the piece stretched to various lengths and possibly comping those together, that went out the window with the broken 4-track. I turned to Paul X Stretch, which is a free digital version, and we were back into using digital time stretching for the piece. So let's head into the session and see how we did. Okay, so we're inside the session, and here we have Paul Stretch, or Paul X Stretch. And it's been updated since I last used it, but basically what I was only using was the stretch amount. I took the initial file in once I had it digitized, and I got it at 2 times, 3 times, and then 10 times. There is apparently a way where you can sort of capture it right from here itself, but the way I did it was to actually take the original audio and I busted into there and then just captured it real time coming out. So here you see the two times as long, 3 times as long, 10 times as long. Side note, very quick and dirty way of taking something small or short like some kind of soundscapey type thing and getting a lot more bang for the buck. But here is what it sounds like just a little bit. That's at 2 times. Apparently there was also a piano in this wind ensemble because that sparkly, grainy thing that you hear sounds like there was a piano in there. Unfortunately, like I said, I couldn't find the score, but maybe someday I will. This is what it sounds like at 3 times as long. And then this is 10 times as long. And the longer you stretch it, the more you can hear these artifacts as the plugin is struggling to sort of interpolate samples by making it longer. There may be more sophisticated ways of doing it without that kind of artifacting, but since I only just downloaded the new version of the plugin, didn't have time to look into that. But the feeling I'm getting from this is sort of almost like a sounds like the score for Alien a little bit, maybe because watching Alien Earth right now, seem to imply that. So that points me in sort of two directions. One is just sort of spacious reverbs, which will not only sort of make some of the intonation of the players a little bit more palatable, mask that a little bit, but also mask the artifacting. So if I come over to the mix window, you see I put a spacer on these two, basically started with a preset and then monkeyed around with it to get something, a lot more to taste. So here's the 2 times length with a little bit of that reverb on it. Can hear it tailing out, and here's 10 times. So I'm definitely starting to get a feeling for sort of like a space horror situation, a little bit of 2001, a little bit of alien score. So once I started hearing that and hearing these things at a glacial pace, and the way that slowing them down brings out these notes, and it's pointing in sort of this very kind of amorphous horror area, the next order of business was to just grab some sounds that I have that are in what I would consider the family of these things, so that I could kind of just augment what was already there. Truth be told, I think, this is pretty fascinating the way it is. The time stretching and the reverb have done almost all the heavy lifting. And if I were a more patient person, I might just sort of take a lot of what I've done, slow it down with some reverb, and listen to it to see if melodies spill out. That may be something I'll do at another time. I think there may be even people who have entire YouTube channels dedicated to doing this kind of thing. So let me show you a little bit of the sounds that I added. Again, I didn't have the score. I don't know what the tempo was for this piece. And so I was just kind of freewheeling, playing it down without a click, just sort of feeling it out. So the sounds I picked to go along with it were like this brass ensemble bending a note, which kind of always reminds me of the score from Lost, which I really like. Used that to a great effect. Similar vein, that's a brass cluster. Also got some ensemble effects for like low string type things. Some cymbals and gongs. This is a kind of a choir patch that takes mod wheel pretty well. And this thing is some sort of bowed situation. I'm not sure, metal bowed. A lot like a bowed cymbal, but something else and fairly creepy. So, so then I just, like I said, played these in over it, and then eventually you can see here I dumped those things in so that I will have them as audio. One last note is that the stretched audio has a pitch plugin. Each of them have that, and that's because this is when you're in the world of cassette tapes, they don't always go at exactly the same speed. So whether or not the recordist, whether his deck was different or my deck was a little off in playback, my ear detected about 60 cents of pitch being off uniformly. That's, whatever the inconsistencies the players are doing is a separate affair, and you really can't do anything about that. But if you want to play this along with your sort of pre-made samples, you're going to either have to tune all of them to this or tune this to them. Easier just to drop a pitch thing on there and sort of by ear make a determination. Before we watch the video, it's worth pointing out that when I score films, usually what I'm doing there is writing the music after the film has been completed. In this case, I created this video after the fact to go with the revised version of the Book of Revelation, which I'm calling Pity the Ghost. So, right about now, I like to ask myself a couple of questions. And one of those is, was this experiment a success? And it's kind of a two for one because you could view it as the initial experiment, which was writing a piece all based in sevens, and then the experiment that we've just run now, which is, can you take something that you think didn't turn out so well and turn it into something better? So, in the case of the first experiment, I made a little joke there about when I evaluated it to my teacher. um, you know, but as an experiment, writing that piece, whether I was taking formalism or serialism seriously, or whether I was trying to get out of it, it was at that point I considered the experiment a failure. I thought the piece was really bad, and said I won't do that again. Turns out that's probably not quite true. I will probably be experimenting with really several different forms of formalist composition, or kind of quasi serial composition, or at least the idea of systems composition, where you set up a system and see what kind of results you can get out of it. If this channel has taught me anything, it's also that my approach seems to be setting up these systems and letting them run. But when you're evaluating the output, don't turn off all your experience and sensibilities. If the system kicks out something good, but you can make it better by changing it around or dropping some parts or whatever, that seems like a fairly obvious move to me. Experimental purists might not like that. So let's give me a C for the initial experiment, with a promise to try harder next time I set up some systems. In terms of this experiment, like, could we turn something of a kind of a sow's ear into a silk purse? I think the answer is yes. Was it successful? Yes. I had this piece that I don't like at all. Had some concepts about whether I sample it and use those samples to make something else, or use the time stretching at various lengths and sort of see what kinds of things are inherent in the sound that could be brought out by listening to it at a more glacial pace and then placing those in a space, and in this case adding some additional elements that were implied by those results. I consider it a success. It's still not the greatest piece I've ever written, and it probably never will be, no matter how much polishing I do. But as far as experiments go, I think I wound up with something kind of like credibly scary and better than it started. The next question is, did I learn anything? And the answer is yes. Like I said, I am interested in the idea of setting up systems, and I have learned that the best approach for me is to set up systems and to, then studiously edit the output. The last thing that I learned kind of comes under almost a more like a philosophical or a moral thing, and that is, I, have a regret that I did not, when presented with the opportunity to play with a live wind ensemble, treat it as seriously or as I should have. I can't get back into my 20 something mind state, or why I decided that I would sort of write this formalist piece, somewhat experimentally valid and somewhat just to get out of doing some real work. But that is absolutely something I would not do today. The opportunities, for writing for real people are actually a lot harder than you would imagine. And so, more often than not, when I'm doing my scoring work or other things, I'm doing reproductions with samples and synths and very clever editing, and I wind up performing a lot of the music myself. So the opportunities to compose for even a small group like this was, let alone a full orchestra, are, for reasons of logistics, exposure, and economics, very hard to come by. So I would never, ever again, given the opportunity to write something for an actual group of live humans, sort of, be cheeky about it and turn in something like I did. I would take it a lot more seriously. If I learned something later in life, it's that, I really value the 10,000 hours that every instrumentalist brings to the work that I write for them. I always overpay them. They always, or at least in my experience, they have always brought something greater to my work then, was there just by virtue of the fact that they know stuff that I don't. Sometimes they'll tell me about how I wrote something where I could have written it more easily. Sometimes they know idiomatic things that are sort of flourishes and techniques that you can just ask for, and they can do an alternate take of that. If you've been following this channel at all, you've seen that I've been kind of reaching out, to people on Fiverr to bring their talents, whether it's cello solo or a British gentleman doing voiceover work. I really, really value, the contributions of others to my work. And that's not a new thing, but in as much as I'm revisiting this piece, it did come to mind. So hope you enjoyed this scary piece for Halloween season. Please like and subscribe. It does help the channel. Comments too. And I will look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks so much.